The Trump government just said that they expect the economy to get back on track. And in this video, I'm going to show you a series of clips that will explain how XRP can be an important part of the new money system we're moving toward. Ladies and gentlemen, we are living in a very special time. The Trump administration's political moves are perfectly in line with Ripple's plans to use XRP as a strategic reserve asset for the whole world. I'm going to show you a bunch of clips in this movie that break down the whole story that is happening right now. Hey guys, you need to watch this video all the way through. We're going to talk about how XRP fits directly into the new world order we're moving toward. Guys, it looks like the utility change for XRP and other blockchain digital assets is happening right now. Your help is very much appreciated as always. Thanks a lot. Thank you to everyone who liked the movies and signed up for the channel. These two easy things help me a lot. Also, if you want to buy XRP somewhere new, check out my pick for the best exchange down in the video's description. Okay, I'll just write about it. I hope you guys like what I have to say. Yes, I believe that is possible. I believe it is likely that many countries no longer use the dollar as their main currency. A lot of places are also open to trying new things. Another thing I don't think will happen quickly, but one of my crazy ideas for a digital asset success is that countries will start to understand that the US dollar won't always be the reserve currency. Other things will be the money of choice. And the same thing we saw with banks. People would ask me why banks would buy our software when they could use software made by other banks. They also didn't know that Deutsche Bank, HSBC, Credit Suisse, and JP Morgan Chase are just a few of the world's top 10 banks. These are the banks that would build a system that the whole world would use. The other 6,000 smaller banks are their biggest and toughest rivals. They really dislike those things the most. They wouldn't want to use the system they built and keep up because it would favor them over their biggest and strongest rivals. I believe countries could also go through the same thing. It seems like every country would love for its currency to be the world's main currency. That has helped the US, that has grown the US economy by large and unfair amounts for many years. And every other country wants to be the world's reserve currency. But the US, with its current situation, the EU, Russia, and maybe one or two other countries are the only ones who could pull it off. But in reality, most countries know that if there is a new world reserve currency that is also a currency of a country, it won't be them. Because of this, they might actually like a currency that no one can control better than one that is run by their biggest political enemies. For that reason, I believe that is the best case situation for digital assets to be successful. These countries might say, okay, the US dollar can't last forever, it's not going to be our currency, though, since no one will want to use the US dollar again. No one but the EU wants the EU to take the place of the dollar, right? No one but Russia wants the ruble to take the place of the dollar. No one but China wants the yuan to take the place of the dollar, which means they might be able to agree on a currency that no one could control, instead of one that was run by their biggest global enemy. If you want a case of success, I think that's the most likely one. How do you get everyone to agree, though? That's the important thing. Well, they might agree if the other option is for their geopolitical rivals to come up with a new currency to replace the dollar. On the other hand, I don't think it's a good idea to just replace the old boss with a new boss if the choice is no boss at all, even if that makes a lot of cryptocurrency people rich. That will be too much for minus. That's fine. Yes, it's great to talk to you two. I have one question. Thanks, David. I guess it's kind of, as someone who has studied economics and worked in markets for 40 years, I think I'm beginning to look like it. Geography-wise, I think we're also in a unique time. I could also see that the world's economy will need to be reorganized in a big way in the next few years. There's something on the table that could be a new Bretton Woods. Or if you want to go back in time, a treaty that could be like the Steel Agreements or the Treaty of Versailles. It's likely that we'll need that for the next 4 years. I'd like to be a part of it. I've looked into this. I believe it makes them more likely to be hit with US trade sanctions. This is how the world's economy works with the US dollar, and why some countries are working on other currencies that might make the dollar less important. It was the dollar that ruled trade after World War II. The United States had the world's largest economy. While other countries were trying to get back on their feet, the dollar was strong and easy to come by. At a meeting in 1944, 44 countries decided to tie their money to the US dollar. At the same time, the dollar was tied to gold. As trade around the world grew, so did the use of the dollar to do business. Even after the US stopped using gold as money in 1971, the dollar was still the most popular currency in the world. People around the world often use dollars to do business because it's easier than any other cash. Things are easy to buy and sell all over the world with the dollar because it is very flexible. Business owners can buy and sell dollars for less money because the US banking system works well and is very efficient. In US dollars, this is how most foreign deals work. An American company that sells wood sells boards to a French builder. For the dollar payment, the buyer's bank in France and the seller's bank in Canada work with other banks in the US. The Federal Reserve in the United States has accounts for these banks. Because these banks are correspondent banks, the money moves easily between their Fed accounts because they are seen as safe partners. The US says that when these matched banks are used, every transaction legally takes place on US soil. This gives the US legal authority and forces other countries to follow its laws on things like money laundering and corruption. It used the strength of the dollar to further its foreign policy goals after September 11, 2001. The goal was to cut terror groups off from their sources of money. The US used its power over the dollar to keep a closer eye on how money moved around the world and stop giving money to bad people. To do this, it put restrictions on its competitors. If a business or country tries to deal with a sanctioned entity in dollars, the US can stop that business or country from getting US dollars. Other countries, though, have been making ways around this. Some EU countries are against the penalties that the US has put on Iran. After the US pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal in 2018, penalties were put in place. One of these was a ban on doing business with Iranian banks in dollars. So, the EU is working on a euro-backed system that will make it easier for Europe and Iran to trade without having to send money across lines. The EU countries that are still part of the Iran deal are looking to trade with Iran without going through the US system. The US is trying to put as much pressure as possible on Iran's economy because of this. India already has a different way to pay for things that it uses to do business with Iran. A report from the Wall Street Journal says it has been used to make deals with Iranian companies that are under sanctions. The United States still has power in the Middle East, though, and it comes from the US dollar. The dollar still controls trade around the world. That's clear in the standoff between the US and Iraq. Iraq says they want the US troops to leave the country. The US told them, "We'll take away your dollars in the US process." But as other countries weaken the dollar, it's not clear how strong that threat will be in the future. When the value of the dollar goes down, it could make it harder for the US to control the world's trade.